Hello, guys. Welcome back to Between the Ropes TV. Now, tonight we're doing something we've not actually done before, I don't think. Obviously, you'll have seen our reactions to the weekend's events, but we want to know what you guys think. There's been a lot going on in the boxing world, including today. Anthony Joshua's finally announced the worst kept secret in boxing, that he has signed his deal with DAZN. So, without further ado, we'll start there, Ray. What do you think of this deal with Anthony Joshua and DAZN?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head once again. It is the worst kept secret in boxing. It's something that was kind of on the cards as soon as Eddie Hearn moved over to DAZN. It was kind of on the cards that Anthony Joshua would do the same thing. It was more a matter of when rather than if. And now he's done that. Financially, it's a great package for him. I think it's the right idea. I think it's the right idea when it comes down to it. Although people can argue that Sky's got a bigger platform for the general public in the UK, it was a natural move to make. Go to the same platform your promoter's on. It'll make those fights financially just that bit easier to make. But then you could counter argue with it. There's only really 2 fights left for Joshua, one if that, because Usyk's that fight's going to be made within the next 10 days. It's going to be announced in the next 10 days. It's probably been made already. But that's a mammoth task for him to get past. And should he get past that task, then it's only really the Tyson Fury fight. That's the fight that everybody's interested in. Tyson Fury getting a winner of Usyk Joshua. But getting down to the business semantics of that move, I think it's a terrific move for Joshua. Joshua would have been financially sound on any platform because he's that sort of name in boxing. There's very few people that carry that name and carry that power, negotiating power, where they're dictating to the promoters and the TV companies. But Joshua is one of those people that could do that. But it's a great deal. Like I said, it lands him on the same platform as his promoter officially, and he's going to be handsomely rewarded for that. So we're just going to have to see how it manifests itself for him. I'm pretty excited to see what now happens, because he's now got he's on a new platform. He's got a new training team. I'm excited to see how this all unfolds in the ring. So I think overall it's a great move for Joshua. But what are your thoughts on it, Josh?
I think it's a good move. Obviously, as you said, commercially, the numbers of 100, I've even seen 123 million sort of bandied about as a number, which, they're big numbers. Let's be honest. So from that sort of respect, fine, fair play. I mean, there's also whispers around that he's getting shares in DAZN. He's also going to be a partner and advise them strategically going forward. So I understand, he talks a lot about being a businessman as well, doesn't he? And I understand why he'd think, right, I'll go down that route. So I do understand that. But for me, the issue comes of, obviously, he is a sort of global press machine anyway.
Yeah.
But, as I think Eddie Hearn would have to admit, and DAZN, without that Sky Sports News platform peddling the fights, in between every show on Sky Sports across all the channels they've got, advertising the pay-per-views, it's a risk, isn't it? And it's also a risk from DAZN's point of view for me, because you're looking at Anthony Joshua. You lost, obviously, last time to Usyk.
Yeah.
You've got the rematch. So the first fight he has, regardless, it's a huge fight, because obviously it's for the unified
mammoth task.
But if he loses, what then? Are they paying him £60 million per fight, say? Because he'll fight twice a year, presumably. Are they paying him £60 million fight for what then? A Robert Helenius, a Derek Chisori? Do you see what I mean? That's the concern for me for DAZN financially. It's a serious gamble they've took. And I mean, I'm team AJ. I'm backing him to win the Usyk rematch. I am. However, it is 50-50. It's still a risk, isn't it?
It is a big risk. It's a big risk in the terms of that, as I mentioned before about Usyk. Usyk's no mug. Usyk's a very skilled operator and has already proven that he's got the tools to beat Anthony Joshua. Potentially could stop him this time round. I think what they're going to have to look at is they wouldn't have made this offer to Anthony Joshua if they didn't have a clear plan B, because they've realised that plan A isn't a guarantee. That's just how big this task is of beating Alexander Usyk. So they need a really good plan B, and that plan B is probably still to keep Anthony Joshua in that mix. Whether they go down a different route, whether they just go, okay, you go down the fight Dillian White, make ease yourself into it, beat Dillian White, go in with a game with somebody else. Hope that the winner of Fury Usyk vacates the belts after that fight, and then go for the vacant belts. Maybe a big fight with Deontay Wilder down the line. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But that could be, for me, the only real thing that makes sense, because you can't just put all your eggs in the basket with a plan A and just think that, okay, he's going to beat him in the rematch, because quite clearly we saw that Usyk's no mug.
Definitely. I mean, guys, we've got a few of you watching now. So, Michael, you're back with us. Really appreciate that, mate.
Evening, Michael. How are you doing?
So, here's one for you. Michael, who do you want to, presuming Anthony Joshua lost, so a little bit of fantasy booking here, who's a realistic second opponent for him? So, guys, if you're watching, that's what I'd like to know, because it's such a big risk for him to zone. I mean, Ray, do you think there's any weight in it? He's sort of shook up his whole team, hasn't he, really? Obviously, he's kept Angel Fernandez.
Yeah.
We know Angel's been working in the corner.
Yeah.
But Robert Garcia's come over. He's in camp. We understand, obviously, we've been through that. It's a bit of an odd decision, but he's still a good trainer. With the new deal in the UK and DAZN, he's going to have to push the Sky pay-per-view a lot more. We've seen him the DAZN pay-per-view. We've seen him do a lot less media in recent years, but that's because of the Sky machine. He's going to have to pick up that slack now. Does that affect his camp? How do you see that playing out?
Well, to be honest, I don't think it should. I think his camp's probably been in full swing for some time. I think he's known the changes he's going to make for some time. I think, yes, he's going to have to market his fights a lot more, but Anthony Joshua's got a dedicated team that can handle that business. His business is in the ring. I think the biggest thing we're going to have to look at now that this deal, like I said, it's been outed. It's the worst kept secret we know in boxing. He's got to concentrate on making sure that the formula his team put together works in the ring. The media side, that's a big thing for DAZN. But Anthony Joshua, I can't think of a better PR team in boxing at the moment, aside from Canelo and Anthony Joshua's team. It's definitely better than Fury's team in terms of promoting their fighter. Anthony Joshua is a big name, huge social media name, huge crossover star. So that should help DAZN for other marketing purposes for their fighter. But believe you and me, I think Anthony Joshua, that's the least of his problems. His problems for me around his camp and then being in the ring.
But doesn't there come a point where he has to just do the media? Like, there's no alternative around that. He's going to have to do it, whether it be a day or a couple of days worth of just sit down and do these interviews.
He will, but he probably would have had to do that anyway when he was over at Sky. I just think that instead of just having a media week, he's probably looking at an extra 3 or 4 days. But on top of that, that's, I suppose, the down point of going to DAZN. DAZN are nowhere near as big a platform as what Sky are. And they arguably will never get there. But they've got a good start by getting arguably one of the biggest stars in the sport. By getting
they've got Canelo as well, haven't they, in fairness?
Sorry?
They've got Canelo as well, so arguably the two biggest.
Well, yeah. I suppose they've got Canelo on some sort of like a short-term deal because he's got 2 fights with him. We'll make it 3 now because he's lost. But really, for me, his problems are going to be on the ring. Whether he has a couple of days out doing media work as opposed to on Sky where he didn't have to. But I think he really needs to make sure that his camp, because he's got two big personalities there. He's got Angel Fernandez, he's got Robert Garcia with all that they bring, and then he's got the rest of his entourage in there. You've got to make sure he's listening to the right people and getting the right messages, because what you don't want is to confuse. We know we've got Anthony Joshua that's mentally fragile at the moment, lacking in confidence. We don't need a confused one in the ring against Usyk.
Definitely. I mean, Michael's come in. Tough one for me because I think he beats most heavyweights, bar Usyk and Fury. I'd agree with that personally. I think he flattens White again. The only dangerous fight he would take is Wilder, which is the only one I'd want to see.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, I was going to say to you, Josh. I mean, do you think he beats Wilder?
Me personally, yeah, for me, I think he definitely does.
Really?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, we've seen Wilder. His boxing ability's always been limited for me. We know that. And also, I think, in fairness to Wilder, and it's a credit to him. I know I've slagged Wilder off on this channel, but being involved in the sort of trilogy that he's just done with Tyson Fury, that takes a lot out of somebody, in my opinion. So it's very much going to be a case of what he has left. So right now, today, I think Joshua beats him because Joshua can box, but then he has got the power, provided Joshua gets, as you said, his own head straight. If he can do all of that, for me, then Joshua flattens him, to be totally honest. I think within sort of round 6 to 8. I think the first couple of rounds would be a little bit cagey.
Do you think he's psychologically, he wouldn't be afraid of the unbelievable power that Wilder has? Because let's be honest, Wilder's got nothing else. But he's still very, very dangerous. Do you not think if he's a bit cautious against Usyk, he's going to be ultra cautious against Deontay Wilder? Do you not think? Or
possibly. I think if he can get his head sorted, because at the end of the day, you can't go swimming without getting wet. So
true.
if he's that psychologically affected, which only he will know, he's got the money. He doesn't actually need to do this. He could just retire. I think we've seen fighters move trainers, move, all sorts around and have a little bit of a career renaissance, Indian summer, whatever you want to say. So I think he can still do that personally. If he can't sort himself out, then I'm going to agree with Michael's next comment. Then if he does land on Joshua probably does stay down, doesn't he? Because, Andy Ruiz, I know he went out, sort of got counted on his feet, but still knocked him out and he was down a few times.
Yeah, I would probably have to go with what Michael said there. I think if he hits Joshua, I can't see Joshua having the powers of recovery, shall we say, that Tyson Fury displayed previously. That's just my opinion. I think I would have to agree with what Mickey's saying there. I think if Joshua gets hit, he can get back up.
I can't believe this, personally. The disrespect to the Brit. We're supposed to be back in the Brit here. But, we'll move on from this because obviously that's come out today. But the reason for obviously this live was actually to go through the weekend, wasn't it? Because it's been a very, very busy weekend.
Yeah, it has.
We'll start with Daniel Dubois. Obviously, we did predict it, both of us, in fairness, Ray. So, well done to you because you've got one right for it now. But the knockout came slightly.
One of these days, isn't it?
Well, you were due it. To be fair, you had a great weekend on predictions. So, but we'll progress with that. But he did get the fourth round knockout. We said rounds 5 or 6. To be fair, how impressed were you with Dubois? Because for me, it was impressive, but really, it was just sort of what we expected.
Yeah, I thought it was still tentative. I thought that Dubois still didn't show me anything from when he was blasting out opponents before he fought Joe Joyce. I didn't learn anything different there, and I thought, I've said it on the channel before, under the tutelage of Shane McGuigan, this is the best person to iron out those deficiencies and errors that he showed against Joe Joyce. So I suppose I've seen improvements overall, but I didn't see anything significant to think, okay, this kid's a future world level operator. I suppose you got to look at his opponent as well, and his opponent didn't exactly bring the best out of him. But Dubois got the job done. Obviously, he's on foreign soil over in the States. I would stop well short of calling it impressive. I would call it a late. He did a job. He went over there, did a job. Does it raise his profile over there? Well, it wasn't incredibly well attended, was it?
That was actually my next point. If you haven't seen the picture, it's on our social media. So on Instagram at Between the Ropes TV, there was probably less than 500 fans in attendance, and the whole promotion was bizarre. We saw the world's worst fight posters, and then obviously Don King got confused at one of the face-offs last week.
Yeah, he's touching 90, and you can just about tell.
1991, but respect to him for continuing. Don't get me wrong, but if you've clearly, with the greatest respect to him, he's not quite, the full ticket now, or he's not up to speed on things. exactly. Then for me, find someone to front your business. Get someone younger in, let someone else have a go. If you can back it, back it. But the whole promotion was just bizarre. And then, look, I mean, I put it on social media. I've seen fights on a school playground have more people watching them. It was just bizarre, wasn't it? I mean,
I just thought it was just all wrong. I mean, why let him go to America? I mean, if he was fighting up a better name, but I didn't want it because the way I see it is the American heavyweights. I've said it before. The American heavyweights that they're starting to produce now would beat Daniel Dubois no problem. Like Jared Anderson, Big Baby Anderson, he would punch holes in Daniel Dubois. So, are you building them for a fight with somebody like Big Baby, or are you just trying to build another profile for him? Because like what you said as well, and I agree. He's got fury. He's let Nathan Gorman go. He's sort of been doing bits of work with Joe Joyce. So I don't know whether is he trying to sell out Daniel Dubois? I'm not too sure.
I agreed with what Scott said on our preview of it. I think it's a case of, try and build him in America. I mean, obviously this fight was in America because Don King won the purse bids, really no other reason. And then going forward, I mean, for me, what Daniel Dubois next, what does he really do? Michael, anyone else watching, let us know what you think. But for me, it's either a fight against the winner of Hughie Fury and Michael Hunter, or possibly even a Joe Joyce rematch. Now, Joe Parker's signed for Sky and Boxer. You'd presume that's not going to get rearranged.
Yeah.
So does it then? Oh, what Frank Warren was like, that man will sell. I can't think of an appropriate phrase, but he'll try and sell us anything money. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
He's going to try and say, oh, it's now the rematch is bigger. It's for a world title fight. That's the concern I've got with it. I mean, what do you think will be next?
Yeah, I think it'll be another kind of similar opponent. I think they'll keep him going down there. It's usually the WBO route with Frank Warren, isn't it? But obviously he can't go down that route in this division. I think he'll probably look for a similar type of opponent just to keep him busy, keep him active. I think the thing that you've got to remember with Daniel Dubois is he's remarkably young for a heavyweight. He's still in his early 20s, so I think I think he's learned a sharp lesson, and I don't think he's wanting to make the same mistake he made with Anthony Yarde down at light heavy. So I think he'll have more keep busy fights, shall we call it, where he can learn. He can showcase his skills, and when Shane's ready to push him, they'll push him. But I can't see him going in for somebody as dangerous as Joe Joyce for him for at least another year. Maybe stretch that to 18 months. I think they'll really want to put Daniel Dubois and put those L plates back on him.
In fact, we've had a couple of comments in. Good evening to you too, mate. Great to have you back in the chat. Appreciate that. Michael's come back. Question for you too. Oh, see, it's tough because for me, there's always an excitement around.
Good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. 17 stone to 24 stone, whatever, some of the bigger guys. It's exciting because if they land on each other, people are going to get knocked out.
Yeah.
And it does create that excitement. For me, it was great. And then I'd say the last 12 months or so, it's probably not gone stale, but sort of simmered down a little bit because I think Tyson Fury's put himself head and shoulders above the rest. Usyk is then a clear number 2. And I'm only saying, he may well prove to be the best of the lot. But right now, that's what I'd say. Then you've got like Anthony Joshua, Dylan White. Joshua's not written off yet. For me, he can still come back. Dylan White's the big question mark. For me, I've been talking about him for years. He could crash the party completely. But I was that disappointed with his performance against Fury. It's still in my head. I'm not thrilled. And then, as you say, then you've got Parker. Even Chisori can cause problems.
Yeah.
Helenius, Hrgovic, Tony Yoka, Martin Bacoli now beat Yoka. He's crashed.
Yeah, and then you've got all those kids coming from Uzbekistan. You've got that Jalilov who won. It was in the Olympics. You've got these as well. You've got Big Baby Anderson, who I was talking about about 10 minutes ago. So you've got there's definitely a future. I definitely think the heavyweight division. I don't think it'll ever be what it was in the 70s and the 80s and even in the late 60s. But I think it'll be better than it was when it was just the Klitschko's.
Yeah. Do you think? Obviously, I agree with you, Ray. For me, it'll never go back to that purely because there's too many. I mean, I suppose people of that time would say it was the same then, but for now, there's that many different networks, promoters, egos. It's almost like they ruin it, really, because how long we were for 4 years we were waiting for Anthony Joshua to fight Deontay Wilder. We still never saw it, and then obviously they've both lost, and the fights you'd still pay to see it, as Michael said earlier. However, it's not, when they're both undefeated for the undisputed heavyweight title. Doesn't England versus America? There's not a bigger fight, is there? And you end up losing those.
But we've got 3 pretty good trilogies between Fury and Wilder to compensate from that. My big thing is the reason why the heavyweight division isn't as good as what it was back then is the Americans aren't really interested in it. They've only really produced one. Debatable how good he is, depending on what your thoughts are on Wilder. If you ask Scott, he'll give you a different opinion than what you and I would give on Deontay Wilder. But there isn't that many. I mean, that might change with Anderson and the Mexican lad that went to the Olympics. I don't think he medaled, or I think he got a bronze. No. But I can't see that lad who's half American, half Mexican. Depending on his following, I can imagine him bringing a big following. But because the Americans aren't interested, it doesn't have that clamor. It doesn't have that. It doesn't have that. It doesn't have that appeal that what it used to have. But there's always in every division, because you could argue about the welterweight division as well with Spence Crawford. There's always that issue with the networks. But I think that's just that nationality debate. That issue with the Americans not being heavily invested in it is what I think's tipped it, because when we had Klitschko's dominating, no one was interested in, because the depth wasn't there. We're starting to get the depth there now, and who knows, by the time the next Olympic cycle comes, it might become exciting again. So overall, it's a good question, because it makes you think.
No, it's a great question. I mean, boxing historian, he'd sell his granny. Yeah. I've been trying not to laugh while you've been talking, Ray, and that was what I was trying not to laugh at.
Yeah. This guy is definitely one of the funny. Yeah.
So, and then Joel Phillips in there. Another issue with the heavyweight division is the cruiserweight division dilutes the talent pool. Well, it does. That's a fair comment, to be fair. And now you've got Bridgerweight thrown in as well. I was
about to say, and then Josh nailed it again. It's getting to the point now where the physical size difference has changed from when everyone was roughly about 14, 15, 16 stone back in the 70s. As you said rightly so at the top, you're talking about 20 stone monsters now. I mean, look at Jarrell Big Baby Miller. Look at the size of him.
Well, steroids help, don't they?
Well, I suppose. And you got monsters like Tyson Fury. You got people like Babich, who thought he was a heavyweight when really was a cruiserweight. The cruiserweight division. I suppose the cruiserweight division is still. You've had people like Holyfield come up and crack the heavyweight division. David Hay and Usyk. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be the next one to cross over into the heavyweight division.
I was going to say, I think in a nutshell, the heavyweights have got bigger, so it does sort of create that gap then, doesn't it, almost? So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, we'll move on from this. I think, it's fair to say none of us are enthralled with Daniel Dubois. And one last point on this that I was thinking, he's had 7 rounds of action since that November 2020 loss to Joe Joyce. So activity is key. If he's not hurting, for me, he's come through it unscathed. He needs to be back out in September, doesn't he?
Yeah, he needs to be learning. He needs to be learning because, just as a quick final point, he got dominated by the most basic punch in the book, the jab. So that just tells you how far developmentally all those early knockouts didn't really teach him much.
Michael's back. I prefer welterweight, middleweights, etc., because there always seems to be more 50-50 fights, and they're technically better to watch. I hope we can get a few more young heavies coming through. I think that ties in nicely, Ray, doesn't it? With obviously your point about there are the talent coming through at heavy.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I have to admit, I totally agree. I mean, for me, we've already seen Catterall Taylor this year. That was an absolutely fantastic fight to watch. Obviously, that was light welterweight or super lightweight, whichever you want to call it. So I totally agree with that, Michael. I think, they are just technically better. And the speed's there, isn't it?
yeah.
We'll move on. And this one I'm passionate about. So anybody who saw our preview on it, Jaime Munguia, obviously, as predicted, he, with all greatest respect to Jimmy Kelly, totally destroyed him. He's got 3 knockdowns on the way to a knockout win in the 5th round. He has now gone, he's 25 years old with 40 wins, no losses, and 32 stoppages. I have one question for you all, and please, anybody with an answer, put it in, because it has done my head in all weekend. Why a golden boy still holding him back?
It's the same. It's the same as Zerdo Ramirez. I mean, he's got a very similar record. I don't want to come down and say this. They seem to do it a lot with Mexican fighters, but Latino fighters do, if they think they can sell that particular fighter, they do have what I call like elaborate and elongated records. Like I said, they tried to do with Chavez's son, and he got found out in the end as soon as he stepped up against somebody half decent. The more worrying thing for me, and the thing that, although I haven't nailed on my predictions, my fight predictions like yourself. I'm not at the top of that league, but at least I'm
No, you're not.
I'm
You're
there
not.
or
It's not even
thereabouts in
close.
terms of. Sorry.
It's not even close, but continue.
I know. You're in the Premier League. I'm kind of up there in League One, but at least what I can say in terms of a style of fighter and about their style being unpicked relatively easy is kind of coming to fruition, because if you look at Jaime Munguia, my biggest worry that I said in that fight preview was that he's gonna be derailed as soon as he comes against a half decent boxer, somebody that can hit and move. And Jimmy Kelly isn't one of our top 5 middleweights, in my opinion. In my opinion, there's 5. I can think of straight away 5 better middleweights, but in the first 4 rounds, Jimmy Kelly was doing reasonably well. In the second round, he put together some beautiful combinations. I just felt like Jimmy lacked a lot of confidence. He lacked a lot of confidence. He was a bit more confident. He could have done more work on the inside. But he kind of showed Jaime Munguia up. He kind of, if I kind of looked at that and thought, I thought he did obliterate Kelly in the end. But I wasn't expecting Kelly to have that much success, particularly in rounds 2, round 3, and at one point in round 4. I wasn't expecting him to get close to him at all and tag him and rough him up like that, and really, really, get to him on the inside. And that was showed some serious alarm bells for me with Jaime Munguia, because if you're letting Jimmy Kelly do that to you, then somebody like Demetrius Andrade, if he can still make 160, would absolutely eat you alive in there. So I can see why now they're keeping it away from people that are half decent.
So, I mean, with all that being said, and I do agree, he's caused more problems than he probably should have been. But with all that being said, realistically then, who's next?
Well, it's a good question, but, he was calling out Charlo, wasn't he? Jamal Charlo, and he's nowhere near ready for that fight. So I don't know. I personally thought at the preview, I'm not going to change my colours. I wanted him to put him in with somebody like Murata. Put him in with somebody just recently lost his belt, albeit it was against Golovkin. See how he gets on. And then you can start to use Murata as a gatekeeper, as a measuring stick, to see how he would do against the top dogs. But I'm not too sure now. I think you start having to look at people like Serichenko. I'm sure Charlo will do a job against Selecki. Probably put him in with Selecki. Jason Quigley, who people remember for Demetrius Andrade. Liam Williams, somebody of that caliber, maybe a Chris Eubank Jr., because I can't see him doing anything against Charlo. I can't see him beating Charlo. I can't see him beating Andrade. I'm going to have to call it out just as I see it. And you know me, I'll always call it out. I just think Munguia's there to be beaten. I think he's a hype job, if I can use that term. I just don't see anything about him to convince me he's going to win a world title at this weight.
No, would you pick a Liam Williams or, let's say, because they're probably the top two at the minute in the country, Liam Williams or Chris Eubank Jr., do they both, or does one of them beat Munguia now? If, fight gets made, it's 3 months' time.
Eubank, I would tip Eubank to beat him. I'm not Eubank's biggest fan, but what Eubank can do is he does have the tools to beat him. He proved that again in the Liam Williams fight that he can hit and move. And in terms of the footwork between Munguia and Liam Williams, I'll probably say there's not much difference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jimmy Kelly had Jaime Munguia on the back foot. You never thought we would ever be saying that. So if Jimmy Kelly can, then what can Chris Eubank Jr. do to him? I don't think Jaime Munguia is as powerful as his record suggesting. You occasionally get those fighters where their record suggests that they're not really a puncher, but then when you watch, the eye test can tell you that they carry a bit of power.
Josh Warrington.
Sorry?
I was just thinking Josh Warrington fits that.
Yeah, that's a classic one. That's a classic one because when you listen to Carl Frampton, he'll tell you that Josh Warrington was one of the hardest punches he's been in there with. And in Tyson, you could argue, look at Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. But for me, you get those fighters as well where their records would suggest they're a puncher, but the eye test tells you that really they're not, and you've got to really question the caliber of their opponents. Another one would be that Edgar Berlanga. That Puerto Rican super middleweight, and I would have to put Jaime Munguia in that mix. I don't think he's as concussive as a puncher as his record suggests, and probably against somebody durable that he can't physically bully because he's the bigger man. Because people are pointing to the Liam Smith fight, but if he fought Liam Smith at a higher weight, I don't think he would have got Liam Smith out there. Liam Smith's way too tough. I just think that somebody like Eubank or Andre or someone with you got a jab, use the feet to get out of range, beats Munguia easily.
We'll move on, if that's right with you, Ray. So
we've
got the Sky card last. We'll start with the main event now. See, Richard Riakporhe. We predicted Riakporhe win. Some people even predicted the stoppage. I don't think anybody predicted a second round knockout win, with the body shot, the way it went.
You probably did.
I didn't. No, I did. I thought it'd go a bit later. I thought it'd be like a, last quarter of the fight. What did you think of that one?
No, I thought Riakporhe put a statement on. I thought Fabio Turchiello had a good record. I thought he put on a show, and that body shot that he landed the left hand to the body was beautiful. He showed that he's got concussive power in both hands. And then now there's talk of a Cody fight, and that's gathering momentum. Again, it's difficult with these quick knockouts because you're not learning anything different with it from the previous fights, and I'm sure the fighter isn't learning anything, and I'm sure he even said himself that he needed to go on the pads. But he's building exciting, he's building momentum. So I think the next question for both of us really is what's next for him, because as I mentioned to you, you've got that difficult scenario where you want to push him on because you're building momentum, and he's clearly your biggest star in his stable. But because he's your biggest star in his stable, you don't want to rush him because you don't want the wheels to fall off. And he lacks that experience on paper, doesn't he? So, I mean, what do you do with him, Josh? If you're Ben Challam, what do you do with him?
Well, just before we get onto that, Dre Day, thank you for joining us. Love that comment. And yeah, he did. So it could cause problems. It would be an interesting fight. But thank you for joining us on the stream, mate. Keep your comments coming. As far as that goes, for me, Ray, it's tough. I would probably quote yourself what you said on our preview of it. I'd get the likes of Glavaki. We saw Jazuski, an ex-Lawrence Okoli opponent in recent fights. Get one of them in, the Eastern Europeans. They tend to be a bit tougher. Get him in. See if they can give him rounds. If they can't, it's sort of a win-win situation because, it builds the hype, doesn't it? And just before I hand it back to Ray, Dom Toner, he's a good mate of mine. Thank you for joining us, Dom. You're a big big fan of the channel. Absolute legend for tuning in. So
Nice to hear from you, Dom.
On that one, Ray, what is that? What you do still, or?
Yeah, I think the reason why is because I still think it needs learning fights. Cruiserweight, although it's wide open, I still stand by saying my point that the top two cruiserweights are still a distance ahead of everybody else. Okay, so you still got people like Bradis. For me, he's the most advanced, and he's the number one cruiserweight. You've then got Makabu in there. He's got experience, although he's not the most skilled, he's not the most technically gifted. He's got what the others don't have, and he's got the experience. You then got a Corley who's got that raw power, who's awkward. He's not as good on the inside, but you don't want to be you don't want to be out of range against him, because if you're out of range, but you're in range for one of his backhands, he's going to hurt you. He's going to get you out of there because he's powerful. So Riakporhe has to build the experience. He has to really focus on the experience because he's raw, he's powerful, but that's going to. I draw comparisons to when Anthony Yard fought Sergey Kovalev. He just didn't have the experience. If he had the experience, you saw him wobble Kovalev, didn't you? He would have got Kovalev out of there. But he didn't, and he looked out of his depth. He looked out of the fight for long periods of that fight. That's my worry for Richard Riakporhe. He steps up too soon and he gets found wanting. I just think he needs more experience with the fighting styles, and that's why I targeted the Eastern Europeans, because they're tough, they're durable, they'll take him into deep waters, and then we'll see. Because you got to remember, not everybody's going to fall over. Not everybody who you tap's going to fall over. So you're going to have to bring a different repertoire of skills. I want to see what other wrinkles he's got in this game.
No, I'd agree. Boxing historian, you're back. Glad to have you back, mate. We're now covering the Sky card. What were your thoughts on this card? Because you know we want to hear off you. That's the whole point of doing this stream. So I mean, we'll move down. Chris Kongo, he had the acid test, if you like, against Sebastian Formella. Well, there was a bit of talk last week, wasn't there, from Chris about Conor Benn's performance against him, and Ben Shalom talked about Chris Kongo wanting to be the first to stop him. He didn't do that, and I'm going to be potentially a little bit controversial here. Chris Kongo's got a good jab, and for me, if he'd have used the jab better in this fight, I think he could have been the first one to get the stoppage. Am I out of order there? Or I mean, it was still an impressive win for me, but I just think it was there for the taking to make that statement.
I can see where you're coming from, because Kongo, although I thought he got a boxing lesson from Michael McKinson. I can see, if he uses the jab more, he can use those feints, the feints to set up the jab more and do his work off the jab. I mean, he's from a good amateur pedigree. He's former Team GB boxer. He did really well, won lots of national titles, but I'm not seeing that a lot more from him. And he's got a good camp, isn't he? He's got a good camp where he's from, good stable. And the type of people he's got in that camp do use the job quite well. So I can see where you're coming from with that. For me, my preference for style, that people that know me knows, I like boxers rather than punchers. I like people to use the jab as an offensive and a defensive weapon. And probably more from Kongo, Salomon Good said, look, a good jab will take you around the world. That's what he used to say when he used to walk into boxing gyms, and that's probably one of the things that he's needed. But I'm seeing improvements, though. I don't want to be too harsh on him. I think I'm seeing a lot more improvement in confidence in the Michael Mickinson, when I think that really hurt him. And he's another addition to the welterweight division, which is heating up, because you still got the likes of Markham in there, haven't you, Josh?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Next for Chris Kongo, there was a bit of talk around Conor Benn, but I think Conor Benn is just becoming the name in every welterweight's mouth for a potential.
Because the money fighting he.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it's Marku, isn't it? Both signed with Sky, both signed with Boxer. It's sort of I stand by what I said on the preview. I think it's still winner sort of moves on to fringe world level. Maybe you never know, a world title shot if it can be delivered. Loser back to the drawing board. I mean, Boxing Historian's just coming with a great comment. I haven't actually heard this, so this is news to me.
Yeah? Is that true? Yeah.
Ben Shalom says Eubank Liam Smith is close to being agreed. Don't apologise, mate. You know, this is exactly why we wanted to do this. We want you guys to get involved.
guys, just come with your comments. Josh, how would you see that fight going?
I think it's. I mean, I'd be very interested to know what weight. You know, Liam Smith. I think he's 33 now. So whether he's struggling to make 154, he's always
I think he'd be
maintained
at 60. I think he'd be at middleweight.
See, I think then it's tough then because Eubank's obviously been up at 168 for a while. I'd like to see that sort of fight get made in the middle at 157, say. But I suppose Eubank Jr. is probably wrongfully, but to the casual fan, he's a bit more Instagram famous, isn't he? So possibly in terms of publicity, he's the A side. It's tough. If it's at 160, I think I'd fancy Eubank. What about you?
Do you know what it is? The Smith family, right? I love the Smith family for years. I just think their whole story is remarkable. Four fighters to win, four brothers to win the British title at various points in their careers. Two of them to win world titles. I just think they're absolutely incredible. And the one thing I agree about Gallagher is from their former trainer Joe Gallagher's not enough's been spoken about them. But nevertheless, I'm building the context for what I'm going to say. But I do agree with you. I do think if this is at middleweight, I'm going to have to lean towards, and it's really hurt me to say this, Eubank. I do think that the type of style that I'll have success against Liam Smith would be somebody that get out of range. But having said that, Eubank's feet are pretty clumsy. And if anyone can cut off the ring and target the body, which is what you're going to need to negate Eubank, Liam Smith can do that. I just don't know whether it. You see, because although Liam Smith's strong and aggressive, Eubank's pretty good on the inside. He doesn't get enough credit. He's got real quick hands, and he throws just as I don't know many middleweights that throws many punches as Chris Eubank Jr. So yeah, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have heavily favoured Smith.
Yeah,
but I think Eubank's just about built that experience that you need now. Yeah, I think he can do it because Liam Smith tends to fight just the one way. Chris Eubank, I think he might have been able to unpick that lock.
Well, it's 2-2 because we've both said if it's at 160, side of Eubank. Michael's come back with I think Liam Smith beats Eubank.
That's fair enough.
And yeah, so I mean, I agree. It would actually be one of those 50-50 fights where it's on a knife edge, isn't it? And it can sort of drop either way. So that's a tough one. But cheers for bringing that one up because that's got us thinking clearly.
Yeah, it has. Yeah.
He's also put jab's the most basic but most effective.
It is, and that's the thing, lads. I mean, the jab. People talk about the jab, and people that get behind the jab and call them boring as well. But the jab keeps your opponent off you. It makes your opponent rethink, reset, and it sets up your shots as well. Creates distance. It lets you do what you need to do. Gives you a breather. Lets you set your feet, move your feet. And brings other shots into play for yourself. So the jab, it's a really fighters with a good jab do well.
Definitely, and another great comment. I bet nobody messed with the Smiths growing up. Must be
yeah.
It's absolutely true, isn't it? Yeah, you're not you the poor guy who started on. Callum Smith, hasn't he, is the youngest, and then heard who his brothers are. It's quite literally, isn't it? You don't want to mess with my big brothers.
Yeah, exactly. But joking aside, I mean, they don't get the recognition they deserve, the Smith family.
Definitely. Do you want to take this one, Ray?
I didn't get to see that one, unfortunately.
I presume you'll be talking about the Berlanga, the Mike Tyson-esque bite, wasn't it? And I haven't seen the fight. Yes, I'm assuming that Michael, just clarify. I'm assuming that's
right.
And if it is that, I totally agree, mate. It was absolutely ridiculous, and it sort of goes back to again what you said earlier, Ray. Talk about Berlanga, power knockout artist. He was found wanting a little bit on the weekend, wasn't he? In all fairness.
Yeah, I think the problem with Belanga is the opponents that he had, and he was blowing them out. Again, he was put on some hype train by Top Rank, and his opponents that are durable. He's struggling. He's struggling with them. He's struggling with in terms of his boxing ability because he's too heavily reliant on his power. He reminds me a little bit of David Lemieux. If he can't get you out of there, he doesn't know what he's doing with you.
Mm.
And
No.
and for me, when I've seen him in previous fights, his jabs look poor, his timings looked off. He's not using any feints, he's telegraphing his punches, he's easy to read, and he's becoming easy to hit. So as he's stepping up through the levels, he's getting fight. What's happening is he's getting the decisions now. He's still getting the wins, but even his last fight, I mean, it was debatable whether or not he won that, and then obviously you've had the biting episode. But for me, Edgar Belanga's no more than again a hype job.
Well, I was just about to start talking about another knockout artist. Yeah, we do have similar water bottles. Yeah, fan of the water, mate. Cheers for the comments. So I mean,
moving on. Hasn't said anything about me pen.
Oh, you'll have it somewhere. Have you got it in your hand? Go on. Give the viewers what. There you go. Give the viewers what they want.
I love that pen.
So, moving down the Sky card, Vidal Riley. Now, obviously, he's of YouTube fame. Yeah. But I think he's definitely moving away from that now, isn't he? I mean, he's got a 51-second stoppage win on the weekend. Hugely impressed with him. And, am I right, Ray? Is he losing that YouTuber title and he's a boxer? It's fair to say.
I don't know because he's heavily reliant on that. I mean, wasn't is it KSI? Wasn't that KSI fella in the dressing room either before the fight or after the fight? Yeah. I think what people have to remember is, unlike Jake Paul and other characters that come from YouTube, I think what you have to look at is Vidal had an amateur pedigree beforehand. He actually boxed for England, so he actually knows what he's doing in there. Mm-hmm. He's just obviously he's had a bit of a parallel life. He's had the YouTube along the same time as the amateur boxing. So for me, I've never really seen him as a YouTuber or like a reality TV star, if that makes sense. I've always seen him as somebody who's been a pretty good amateur, but he's probably had his eye on other stuff outside of boxing. So it's no surprise. You saw him, he's technically sound. I mean, TK Villar, I mean, he's kind of from up here. He's in the army. He's from Fiji, but he's based up in the northeast. And I know a lot about him. He's a bit of a heavyweight, cruiserweight sort of gatekeeper, but he's tough. But the shot that he caught him with the left hand, that would have put any cruiserweight down. And I like this kid. And answer your question, he has got ability.
No, definitely. I mean, Michael agrees. Boxing Story also agrees. He does look decent, and that's the thing. I mean, I don't know how far he can go. I think sort of jury's out on that, but he's definitely impressing so far. And let's be fair, the presence that he brings with KSI going to a show, it's going to help sell tickets and draw a crowd and eyes onto the product.
Just think about what Josh. I just think for the marketing side of it, you put him in and you get KSI, maybe getting him walking into the ring, and he can tap into that market that when these YouTubers start to encroach onto boxing, people were talking about, they'll bring new eyes into boxing. I don't know about you, but I'm yet to see that. But
I think the new eyes watch that fight. Jake Paul fans. They're not boxing fans. They're Jake Paul fans. They watch Jake Paul's fight. I think that's
they don't watch the undercard. Yeah, they don't watch the undercard. And the only way I can get around it is if maybe KSI has some sort of input and he gets on some sort of stream and people are watching him come in the ring with his Vidal, and that might bring eyes to Vidal. But we'll have to see.
No, I agree with Michael. I think the KO. Technique. Yeah, the technique and that KO, that's one that, if he goes far, that's always on the highlight reel, isn't it? Because it was pretty spectacular the way he landed it.
Yeah.
Boxing Story.
I mean, there's no reason, guys, why he can't make noise at British level, within the next year. Within the next year, 18 months, I can't see why he can't go down the British route and then see what happens after that.
No, definitely. I mean, we'll move on because this one I'm actually excited to talk to you about, Ray, because I know you follow the amateur scene definitely more than I do. I'm guilty of that. So Lauren Price made her debut. Obviously, got an impressive points win. To be fair, she looked good. I thought her footwork was brilliant. You know, I'm not quite going to do a Ben Shalom and compare her to Lomachenko at this stage, but definitely a promising start. In fairness to her,
I nearly fell off my chair when he said that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, isn't it? Because you know he's a young promoter. As a promoter, he's there to promote. That's what he's here for. But when you start making comparisons like that, it's always a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, she's clearly gifted. She's clearly talented, isn't she? And she's streets above opponents at this level. But I don't have any worries that they're going to do a sort of Sandy Ryan with her. I think her ability speaks for itself. I think clearly she'll end up being one of the best British boxers, female boxers of all time. I think she really is that good. She's the complete package. And I suppose I'm being a bit hypocritical there by laughing at somebody comparing it to Lomachenko and coming out with a comment that I did. But the difference is I can see that she's working hard. I've already seen improvements in that fight. Then I saw when she won Olympic gold at the final. But what I like about her is she's staying grounded. She's still training in Team GB in the Institute of Sport in Sheffield. Yeah. Also, she's still got an eye, her and a partner, Karis Artensoul, because they still want to compete in the Olympics. So they want to do a duel, which is why they're saying with Boxer, because Boxer will enable it to compete on both platforms, and she still wants to win more titles. I think as long as she keeps that grounded under Rob McCracken, I think she'll do well. So even though I'm laughing at the comparisons with Lomachenko, I wouldn't be surprised if she achieves great feats down the years, because ability-wise, she's technically sound. She really is.
No, I agree. I mean, before we move on, Michael back obviously talking about Vidal Riley. Anyone with a YouTuber behind them will make money. KSI is fighting in August again. I didn't know that. So, I mean, I've got to be honest, I'm guilty of it again. I don't pay too much attention to the YouTube scene. It's mad how people fighting on YouTubers' cards earn more than elite boxers. It blows my mind. I have to say, I totally agree, mate. I think it's shocking. The only thing that I hope is true and comes with it, cast our minds back to Logan Paul KSI. I think it was their second fight. And obviously Billy Joe Saunders defended his world title on the undercard, and obviously it got slagged off massively. But Eddie Hearn and, you know, Billy Joe Saunders' people did come out and say that he earned more for that fight because of the profile that the YouTubers brought than if he'd have been the main event. And it obviously got him out in front of a sold out Staples Center. So I hope that's true, but I do definitely take your point. You know, there's got to be more of a benefit to it. If not for me, they can all go and do MMA or something.
Yeah. There's that point. And I suppose you look at people like Amanda Serrano. I mean, she got her first £1 million payday for fighting under the banner of Jake Paul. So that's one positive thing that's come out of these YouTubers coming into boxing. They are getting, as well as they are earning more than some of the boxers on there, that are making sure that some of the boxers that are fighting on their cards are coming out with bigger paydays, bigger purses. So that needs to be looked at and commended as well.
Just on this boxing story, great point. Let's take a moment, guys, to say our thoughts to our African fighter that sadly passed away during the week after his fight, where he was punching an invisible opponent after suffering an injury. Yeah, I mean, for anyone who has seen that footage, it is a little bit disturbing, to be totally honest. It's harrowing. So yeah, thoughts are with him and his family. And you know, the only slight, and it's no consolation to anybody, but the only slight silver line is the fact that it is always quite touching how anybody in the boxing community, whether it be fans, promoters, fighters, trainers, everybody, they all have their differences. And, you know, we have heated debates on here. However, when stuff like that happens, everybody does come together, and that's exactly how it should be.
Yeah.
So
they all get cast aside, don't they, Josh? I mean, there's things far more important in the sport of boxing, which we all love, and that's life or death. And that was sad to see. And it just hammers home the risks that these boxers take when they step into the ring. You know, the brave men and women that are doing this just for the sole purposes of getting paid in our entertainment. So it puts things into perspective. So that South African boxer that effectively he's given his life in the ring. It brings back all those memories, of all those fighters that we've seen that have either passed away or been seriously injured in the ring. So our thoughts go out to his family.
Definitely. Moving on. Imran's not with us tonight. It is great to have Imran on, to be fair.
Yeah.
And mate, if you want to come on, I mean, we'll be wrapping up on this one shortly, but if you want to come on, just ask. We'll drop you the link. You are absolutely more than welcome, mate.
Yeah, definitely.
Back to Lauren Price, Ray. Now, obviously, I agree with everything you just said. I've got one question on her. Now, she's a huge talent, and I agree. Although it's funny at this stage, the Lomachenko comparisons, she's got the potential for it. But where's her weight? Obviously, she won gold at middleweight.
Yeah.
She's then fought at welterweight. Now, there's some big fights for her there, but, with the lack of depth that we've talked about in women's boxing, for me, she could be fighting for a world title, by a 5th or 6th professional fight at the latest, possibly faster. But then where does she go? Because if she's making welterweight, the pro game is a bit different. How is she then going to fare at middleweight? Where would you place her? And guys, where would you place her?
I think what people you see, the thing is with amateur boxing is you make the weight on the day. So if you get people like Sean Porter fighting Usyk at middleweight, because Sean Porter was obviously a lot heavier as an amateur. So it's no surprise you get people like Andre Ward and other people that are from the same areas I'm from, people like Lewis Ritson, for a random name, fighting at much heavier weight as an amateur than you are at a pro game, because for pros, you get longer to make the weight. And then you get a 24-hour weigh-in, day before weigh-in. So you can really boil yourself down and then pile the weight on in 24 hours. So if you can safely do welterweight, why not go for a shot at welterweight? Because then she'll have all the physical advantages when she rehydrates. Now, when it comes to the question of world titles, I agree. The depth in women's boxing isn't there. So she can be accelerated to get a world title shot. The downside of that, Jessica McCaskill's got all the belts at welterweight, and she's a dangerous cat. Although Katie Taylor beat her, McCaskill at welterweight's a different problem. She's a good fighter, and obviously at middleweight, you've got Savannah Marshall, you've got Clarissa Shields. They're dangerous cats as well. So she's got it tough whichever weight she steps at. If she goes to light middleweight, she's got Natasha Jonas, so I think she could. And she's got the Scottish girl Hannah Rankin as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if yes to come if she wins a world title in all 3 weights, because I really do think Lauren Price is that good.
No, I'd agree, mate. And I was thinking, you're right. I think Natasha Jonas is a fight that Sky and Boxer might be building towards in the probably not too distant future, in fairness, but certainly 18 months to 2 years. So we'll move on. Our final topic of the night. We said it was one to watch out for in our preview. Zach Chelli beat Jermaine Brown to win the English super middleweight title. Now, for me, we saw a little bit more from Zach Chelli on what we saw in his previous fight when we sort of called on him, when he wasn't throwing those big shots and they weren't landing. He didn't really have a plan B. He showed a bit more of boxing ability, and, he took Jermaine Brown out of his rhythm. But I don't know. I'm not sold on Zach Chelli still. Are you, Ray?
Not really. Zach Chelli, Zach Porter, these kind of fighters, they're not really doing it for me at this moment in time. We'll go back, look at Zach Chelli. I've watched him for a number of years now. I've watched him on Matchroom shows, and then I've watched him on BT shows, and I saw me at that draw against Little Cleaver, Big Cleaver, what do you call him?
I know, Jack Cullen.
Yeah, Jack Cullen, yeah. I remember looking at him thinking this may be the pinnacle for him. I can't see him get, but he I suppose he has improved since then. But I think this sport's all about levels, and for him to really go through the levels, I need to see more gears from him, and I'm just not seeing that at the minute. I think he got through his earlier fights by just relying on his physical strength and his power. Obviously, as soon as you step up the levels and people are a lot more durable, then he's finding out his boxing skills perhaps aren't his boxing skills, his ring IQ on where it should be, but it's slowly improving. But whether it's enough to take him to the next level, in my opinion, I doubt it.
See, before we move on, thanks for coming, Boxing Historian. We will have wrapped up by then, sadly. But as we said, the plan is to do more of these, so we'll no doubt see you on the next one. And thank you for supporting it, mate.
Yeah, definitely.
As far as Zach Chelly goes, for me, I agree with you. I think when he fought Jack Cullen, I thought that could be it. Obviously, we know his story. He had a tough lockdown. I think he did some supply teaching, and so he had to go out into away from the boxing world.
Yeah,
but he's shown little improvements fight on fight, and I would credit him with that. But I just think for me, I think he might make it to British level up from English. But the fight they're similar fighters, and I can't see him going much beyond British level. He may sort of blag a European title shot, and if he can get the right champion, you never know.
Yeah.
But sadly for me, I mean, it seems like Sky and Boxer the way the promotion was last week. It was like they were talking about him, carrying their super middleweight hopes, and for me, I can't see him doing that.
No, I can't either. I do kind of wonder if he's going to be carefully matched, because if they do see him as carrying their super middleweight hopes, there's a lot of people they're going to have to avoid, because even if Eubank wants to campaign at that weight, I think Eubank comfortably beats him.
Destroys him. Yeah. I mean, so I said Zach Chelly about our last thing, but I suppose we've got to talk about it. I did mention it a little bit in the reaction while you were off on your holidays. Joe Parker, New Zealand heavyweight, we all know him, really likeable guy.
Yeah.
He has now signed for Sky Sports and Boxer. Bit of a weird one for me, because he's a fan-friendly guy. He's fought obviously in Britain a fair few times now, and British fans seem to really like him too. So it's tough for me, because I don't really know why Eddie Hearn and DAZN wouldn't have wanted to extend his deal. What do you think, Ray?
I don't really know either. I think possibly. Well, I think performance-wise, he hasn't really looked the best. I know people will say he's improved a bit under Randy Lee, but he's never really set the ground alight. I think his best performances in terms of him looking electric were before he fought Anthony Joshua. He had a good fight against like Daniel White and those fights with Chisora, but he's never in that fight against Fury as well, Huey Fury. But he's never really looked at the same caliber and at the same promise as what he did when he was a WBO champion before he fought Joshua. He's never really recaptured that form. And what he's shown now is that he's evolved as a fighter, and Andy Lee's educated him and got him to use the ring a bit more and got him to use his legs a bit more. But I just don't. He doesn't strike me as an explosive, exciting fighter that you would want on his own. So I think it's just a case of him going on Sky because they're the next best paying platform for him.
But don't you think now he's 30 years old now, so he's still young enough to keep developing? He showed real improvements in the second Chisora fight under a proper camp with Andy Lee. So I think he can still develop. And for me, DAZN, and now they've signed Anthony Joshua, not bringing it back to that. But, so DAZN pay-per-view in the UK is now going to be a thing. We knew it was coming anyway. But they're also asking you to pay $7.99. So potentially you might get a 20 or 25 quid pay-per-view bill for an Anthony Joshua fight in a month. But you're then also going to have your usual $7.99 bill for that month. They need headline acts, and I know they've probably got the biggest stable. But for me, Parker is a headline act that they've now lost. I mean, Sky and Adam Smith have said that. Ben Shalom said it. We've put a lot of money and time into investing in the future of the sport in terms of the Olympians they've signed. We needed a headline act. We've now got one in Joseph Parker. I mean, interesting point from Michael Ray before you carry on, but I always thought he'd sign for Frank Warren with him being Max Ferry. I'll be honest.
That's a good shout.
When the Joyce fight was talked about on BT and they said it was close, that was exactly where I thought it was going. I thought it's going to be all right. That'll be his new signing then.
It's probably money. It's probably Sky probably throwing a lot of money at Parker and saying, look, same with us. And that's what it was. We know that that's what Frank Warren's been struggling with. and Sky have coughed up the cash in order to turn his head. But I do agree with you. I do. That's my people that know me know that I critique a lot of the matchroom cards because they tend to be hit or miss. There's nothing in the middle. They're very inconsistent. So the big builds they just about get right. But it's those ones that used to be when they were on Sky, the Friday night fight shows, which had like a lot of the emerging talent with some good British headline acts.
Yeah.
We're not having that anymore. So there's a lot of future prospects we're seeing on shows, and when it comes to women's boxing, they're fantastic. They're really leading the way, but that in the middle depth just isn't there. And from that point of view, Parker would have been ideal, but I can see why they wouldn't want to sign Parker because his performances probably haven't commanded the salary or however much you would need to pay him. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, that's a great point by Michael. Again, Parker would have got White out there if it had been, another 30 seconds, possibly not even that. That was that close. I think another 5 to 10 seconds, it was one shot landing and game over for Dylan White. I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Go on.
I was just about to say with that fight, it could have gone. There was times where it could have gone either way. It was a right barnstormer, wasn't it?
That's what I mean. I'm excited to see how they match him because, again, is it going to be a Hughie Fury rematch if he comes through Michael Hunter? I think that's potentially a quite an obvious sort of standout that Sky can make. But no, I mean, we'll see how it unfolds. I think we'll wrap it up there. Everyone, I mean, people have sort of switched off now, but guys, thank you for joining us. We are planning to do more of these. I think we're going to do some different. It's not always going to be weekend reviews. So if anyone's got any ideas for anything, let's all have a chat about it. And again, guys, if you want to join us on a stream, just ask. We can post the link. You can come on, no problem at all. So thank you for joining us, and cheers to you as well, Ray.
No worries. Cheers, Josh.